This is Puffy and she is your next avatar. Or should I say, your next partial avatar. Yes, there are two of them. You heard that right. The next Avatar series will have two avatars, and not just two avatars, but twin avatars. After the leaks that dropped yesterday, I didn't think things could get much crazier, but even more insane leaks have just dropped for the next Avatar series. We got concept art, storyboards, lore dumps, dialogue, new characters, and much more. The floodgates have finally opened. After 3 years of no information, everything leaks all at once. And I can't believe it. For anyone who's still doubting that all of this is real, if you look up the code name of the series, which is Aurora, you can find people on LinkedIn who are literally working on it. And they have been working on this series for several years. Anyways, we're gonna be going over and summarizing every single thing that was leaked today. So if you want to learn everything, you better stay until the very end of the video. The first thing I want to address is something I got slightly wrong in my last video. The animatics that I saw were in black and white. So I kind of assumed the next avatar was going to be lighter skinned. I mean, it's an easy assumption to make when you're watching things in black and white. I mean, it's literally a drawing on a white surface. So my bad, guys. Obviously, I can't show you the official leaks, but they are incredibly easy to find. Anyone who's ever used the internet and knows anything about using the internet, if you want to find them, you can. But I actually did have an artist do a recreation that gets the point across pretty well. Obviously, we had to do a little bit of changes here and there due to copyright. I guess you could say this is the first official fan art of Puffy. The skin tone, the eyes, the hair color, it's all exactly the same. The leaks included a lot of new information on Puffy and her background as well as her sister. Unfortunately, we still don't know her sister's name as the script uses code names for both of the twins. This is something very common in the industry. If you guys remember in the live action when the scripts got leaked, I think they said Aang's name was like Daniel or something. So yeah, they change the names often in these things. They do this to keep the franchise a secret for anyone wondering. For instance, the twins refer to being quote-unquote saviors, which is essentially just a code word for the word avatar. One of the absolute biggest reveals from the script is that both girls are the avatar. And at least early on in the story, Puffy's sister is considered to be the more powerful avatar. Again, I can't 100% confirm that both twins are capable of bending all four elements, but I do think it's safe to say that it's incredibly unlikely that the sister is going to be the dark avatar, similar to what happened in Korra. That was a theory that was brought up a lot. I don't think that's happening. They're both stated to just be the avatar, and let's just take it at that. Puffy is described as someone who is timid in the use of her abilities and a reluctant hero. She became an amputee at a young age due to an unknown incident. She sounds pretty similar to Aang, while her sister kind of sounds like Korra. Her sister, which of course we don't know her name yet, is described to be a little bit awkward. She's snarky. It also says that she loves her powers and she loves the attention that it brings. She appears outwardly confident, but her confidence is really just a front for her insecurities and vulnerabilities. I think it's pretty obvious what they're doing here. One sister is supposed to be like Aang, while the other one is supposed to be like Korra. In my last video, I mentioned that the Seven Havens are cities that are supposed to be quote-unquote safe havens from the apocalyptic wasteland, and holy crap, did that just get confirmed in a big way. I'm not gonna lie, that was a little bit of an educated guess based on some inside information I got told, but I'm glad it got confirmed. In the concept art for the series, which again, I'm unfortunately unable to show, but I'll put something similar on the screen, we see that the landscape has mostly been reduced to a barren wasteland. The wastelands are described to be incredibly dangerous, as it's common to come across storms, which are a combination of lightning storms and extreme sandstorms. In fact, the sandstorms are so dangerous that groups of benders are sent out on expeditions to try and force them away from the city. In the concept art, we can see a large city in the background that is covered with spirit vines. This city looks extremely similar to Omashu and is probably the ruins of the city after the apocalypse, which I guess you could say they ruined Avatar. An interesting detail about this city in the wasteland is that the sky is filled with aurora lights, which is actually the code name for the series, interestingly enough. In this concept art, Puffy is with an airbender, specifically an airbender from the White Lotus. There are a couple of weird things about this. Because we know Puffy didn't grow up with the White Lotus, only her twin did, so I'm not sure why she's here. Maybe this is supposed to be Jay and they changed him later on, I don't know. Or maybe this could just take place after they reunite. There's so many different things that could be happening here. But the other interesting thing is the Airbender's arrow. The Airbender's arrow is kind of futuristic looking. The shape's a little different and it's kind of hollow in the middle of it. You can see her skin color instead of it being blue. Weird how the tattoos can change so fast. It probably hasn't even been 100 years yet, but we've seen how the world can change in post-apocalyptic events in other series. Drastic changes tend to happen. The Airbender's wearing a White Lotus uniform that is extremely similar to the one we see in Korra, but it's a lot more armor-like and bulky. The haven Puffy is living in is called Elora, which is strangely kind of Western sounding. It's a little hard to tell from the storyboard image, but Elora kind of looks like this shanty town or maybe a favela that is nestled into a canyon. Now, I do think there is a reason for this. It's likely to act as a shelter from the storms. It even has houses built into the side of the cliffs. The city is very hastily built as there's huge jagged rocks right in the middle of it, with houses just slapped on or even around them. The edges of the haven are surrounded by walls similar to what we see in Ba Sing Se, and it has a gate in front of it like Omashu. This does raise the question if the entire world is like this desert-like wasteland, or if only the wasteland around Elora is like this. A big focus of the League script was on the relationship dynamic between the sisters, including a confrontation between them where they physically attack one another using their bending. Obviously, this is a major spoiler for possible plot points during the series. The fight is because Puffy's sister lied to her about something big, and that lie seems to be covering up something bad that happened when they were younger. It's kind of hard to think of them as being younger, considering they're both only 9 here. Like, what, you're referring to something that happened when you were like fucking 2? We know they have a flashback to playing a game when they were younger, so maybe that's what they're referencing to this time. But they were quite literally toddlers here. My personal theory here is that maybe the sister was somehow the cause of Puffy's accident with her leg, or was somehow the reason they got separated and Puffy had to grow up in poverty. Something she would obviously resent her for. After briefly fighting, Puffy storms off into the wastelands. Her sister tries to convince her not to go as she's worried for her safety, but Puffy doesn't listen. We also got some pretty big news about the White Lotus, mostly that the White Lotus has a secret compound located either inside of Elora or possibly nearby it, and that some of their duties include fighting off the deadly storms to protect their city. For whatever reason, the White Lotus is keeping Puffy and her sister under house arrest, and they're not really ever allowed to leave. Remember the Airbender we talked about in the last video? The one on the cool hoverboard? Well, we actually got leaks of him and Puffy together. It looks like this was supposed to be future promotional art. Jay's uniform that he's wearing seems to be consistent with the other characters and the animatics from my last video I talked about. The uniform looks very pro-bending-esque. Perhaps since it's a post-apocalyptic world, they're just reusing or repurposing any armor that they were able to salvage from Korra's time. Speaking of Jay, the leak storyboards predominantly feature him and Puffy having a conversation. We see Puffy running down the alleyways of Elora towards the walls and gates, which look absolutely ridiculously huge compared to her. I'm not even exaggerating when I say the walls look like they're 60 times taller than her. Jay is watching her from above, only to jump down and block her from leaving the city. He extends his hand out to her, but she rejects it, and then immediately whistles for my new favorite character, which is Geet. Geet is Puffy's cat monkey, and oh my god, is he so cool. He's over here jumping around from building to building, falling like 200 meters. With Geet's help and a little bit of earthbending, Puffy is able to escape the city, and Jay runs after her. Honestly, this part is kind of confusing to me because based on the promo renders of Jay and Puffy, they seem to be pretty tight, but maybe this is just the first time they meet, or I don't know. From what I can piece together, here are what the first 3 episodes are going to roughly look like. We get an opening shot of the city, and then we're immediately introduced to Jay, who is riding his hoverboard all throughout the city, saying hi to everybody and everyone expressing how much they love him. While this is happening, we get interconnected shots with Puffy and Geet, and they are just the complete opposite, and they're looking so sad. Eventually, some time passes and a giant spirit eye attacks the city. I think this is Father Glowworm, but that's not confirmed. Puffy and her sister reunite to stop the spirit eye, but unfortunately, the spirit eye kidnaps the mirror of the haven. And then the sisters head off and start their training arc, and presumably to save the mirror. Sometime after this, the sisters have some bonding time where they goof around, and we learn that Puffy really likes pet rocks. An earthbender liking rocks? Who would have thought? Then something happens that causes them to fight in the wasteland, ending with Puffy storming off, and that's pretty much it. Honestly, after years of knowing nothing about the series and then finally getting all of this in the span span of 24 hours. It may sound like we know a lot, but we actually know very little. Like, we don't know where the plot's headed or who the main villain's gonna be. Is it gonna be the Spirit Eye? We don't know. There's gonna be a lot of room to theorize, and if you guys want that type of video in the future, let me know. This is gonna be one hell of a wild ride, but I am here for it.